Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into something we all deal with, failure. It's kind of crazy how much power this one concept holds over us, right? Almost every single one of us fears it, goes out of our way to avoid it, or feels this deep sense of shame because of it. We're terrified of messing up in our careers, our relationships, our businesses, you name it. It creates this silent emotional pressure that actually ends up controlling our behavior. But what if failure isn't the real enemy here? What if the actual danger is our emotional collapse after the setback? Today, we're going to explore exactly why we fear failure, how emotionally resilient people look at it differently, and how we can actually transform that pain into growth.
So let's start with a shared human experience and ask a question I think literally everyone watching this can relate to. Why does a simple mistake feel like an absolute punch to the gut? You know the feeling. You misspeak in a meeting, or maybe you send an email to the wrong person, and boom, your body reacts instantly. Well, it's not just in your head. There is a very real, completely biological reason why the fear of looking foolish creates such an intense physical reaction.
Section 1. Why failure hurts. To figure this out, we need to take a quick look at the biology of a setback.
It turns out we humans are deeply emotional creatures, and our brains are constantly working to protect our identity and our social belonging. And it does this so fiercely that it treats emotional pain almost exactly like physical danger. It's true. Functional MRI scans actually show that the exact same brain region, the anterior cingulate cortex, lights up whether you've burned your hand on a hot stove or you've just been publicly rejected. Crazy, right? That is exactly why public embarrassment can literally feel like a threat to your actual survival.
And because your brain is sounding the alarm, you get hit with very real, visceral physical symptoms. We're talking chest tightness, intense anxiety, a heavy sense of shame, or just pure emotional exhaustion. Your brain is essentially doing everything in its power to make you run away from those painful emotions. So if you instinctively try to hide from failure, cut yourself some slack. It's a biological defense mechanism. But while this kept our ancient ancestors safe, in the modern world, it mostly just holds us back.
Which brings us to Section 2, the trap of avoidance, and how this fear actually shrinks our lives.
Here's the thing. Driven by the immense pressure of social judgment, our fear of being criticized often completely hijacks our ambition. We all crave acceptance. Nobody wants to be the punchline. So maybe you avoid starting that side business because you're terrified of what your relatives will say if it tanks. Or maybe you're a talented creative who never shares your work because the fear of criticism is just paralyzing. Sure, this dynamic keeps you emotionally safe in the short term, but fundamentally, you're just stuck.
And this builds into what psychologists call a highly destructive avoidance loop. It goes like this. You experience a painful setback, so you naturally avoid similar situations just to get some temporary relief. Think of someone who gets embarrassed speaking up in a meeting and then just never speaks up again. Because they avoided it, the brain hardwires that fear, learning, okay, that situation is definitely dangerous. And finally, confidence slowly shrinks. Avoidance, slowly but surely, just builds a much smaller life.
While we're stuck in that avoidance phase, we often fall victim to this brutally cruel internal dialogue. You know the voice. I ruin everything. I never do anything right. This harshness is actually often rooted in childhood conditioning. If you experienced harsh criticism or punishment for mistakes as a kid, your brain was basically taught that failing is highly dangerous. So as adults, we carry that forward, reacting to failure like frightened kids, clinging to perfectionism just to feel safe, and deepening our own suffering through completely unnecessary self-hatred.
Okay, Section 3, Event versus Identity. This is where we make the core psychological pivot. This right here is an absolute game changer. You have to separate the event from your identity. One of the most destructive psychological mistakes we make is turning I failed, which is just a temporary event, into I am a failure, which is an identity. Or turning I was rejected into nobody will ever value me. Emotionally resilient people never, ever take a temporary experience and turn it into a permanent self-definition. They completely separate the outcome from who they are as a human being. Just look at these common traps. Failing an exam can easily twist into the trap of I'm not intelligent, or a failed relationship morphs into I am unworthy. The resilient mind recognizes that a failed business does not mean you're incapable forever. Protecting your core confidence means realizing that failure is just something that happens to you. It is absolutely not who you are.
Moving on to Section 4. What is true resilience? It's all about recovering without breaking.
So let's look at the actual definition of emotional resilience. It's the ability to recover, adapt, and keep moving forward despite setbacks or pain. Notice what's missing there? Resilience does not mean you avoid pain, or that you never feel sad, frustrated, or full of grief. Resilient people feel all of those things. The difference is simply the speed and the health of the recovery. It's having the psychological flexibility to allow yourself to feel the emotions without letting them permanently destroy your direction.
When things go wrong, instead of spiraling into catastrophic thinking, like my life is completely ruined or everyone is judging me, resilient minds maintain perspective. They ask grounding questions like, hey, will this matter in 5 years? Or what is still under my control? By forcing yourself to look at the problem realistically instead of catastrophically, you massively reduce that overwhelming emotional flood. It literally just calms the mind down.
And then they take it a step further. By replacing that self-pitying question of, why is this happening to me, with this powerful reframe, what is this teaching me? You transform a painful failure into a highly valuable education. Remember, the brain actually learns through failure. Difficulty forces us to adapt. When everything succeeds easily, our growth basically flatlines. But a failed communication, that improves our social awareness. A failed business decision, that sharpens our strategy.
Plus, the pain of a setback becomes so much easier to handle when it's connected to meaning. When you tie your struggles to a larger purpose, maybe you're an athlete enduring pain to get better, an entrepreneur tolerating uncertainty for a grand vision, or a parent sacrificing for your family, you build the psychological flexibility you need to endure. Meaning transforms suffering. It takes an empty failure and turns it into a totally necessary stepping stone for growth.
Let's get practical. Section 5. Strategies to bounce back. Here are 7 steps to build daily resilience.
Think of these 7 steps as your psychological training regimen. First, separate your identity from the outcome and accept the emotional pain rather than just suppressing it entirely. Catch that catastrophic thinking early and intensely focus on what the event is teaching you. Most importantly, return to action quickly so fear doesn't have time to take root. Top it off with self-compassion and tie your goals to a deeper meaning so the struggle always has a purpose. Every time you survive a difficult experience using these steps, you're actively strengthening your emotional tolerance.
At the end of the day, the strongest confidence isn't built by a perfect track record. We all have this myth of the perfect person in our heads, assuming successful individuals just rarely fail. That is a total illusion. Highly successful people fail repeatedly. True inner confidence is built by the undeniable proof that you survived the pain and you kept moving forward. An easy life rarely builds deep confidence. When you overcome hardship, your brain learns, I can survive difficult emotions, and that fundamentally changes your identity.
And I want to leave you with this final, really powerful realization from today's explainer. Emotional resilience transforms fear into courage because it teaches the mind, I can fall without being destroyed. True confidence isn't believing that life will always go perfectly. True confidence is trusting yourself to recover when it inevitably doesn't. So I'll leave you with this to ponder. What bold steps would you take tomorrow if you truly believed that your next failure wouldn't break you, but would only make you undeniably stronger?